Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Holy cow, the tension is in the air. Things are, spicing up all over the place, and I don't say that in a good way, technically speaking. There's some cases here that are good, but today is, let's see here, Wednesday, November 17th, 2021, and let's dive right into it. So first off, I just want to say that I just got the alert on my phone now, so I figured I might as well just read it. There now seems to be... Disclosed.tv used this word chaos at the Rittenhouse trial. I don't know if I would use that word yet. The defense said the file name of the video sent earlier was not similar to the file name given over the weekend to them on their laptop. The judge suggests an evidentiary hearing will be needed. So again, this is sort of, again, just to keep you folks updated relative to what's going on in terms of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. With that being said, though, let's jump right into it. So first off, we'll add to that shortly pertaining to that. That's not the only part of the Rittenhouse trial I'm going to cover today, but Vice President Kamala Harris allegedly feels increasingly isolated inside of the White House as her approval ratings plummet, with the first female VP believing she's not getting the same support given to other members of the Biden administration, according to a detailed new report. And I quote, "It's hard to miss the specific energy that the White House brings to defend a white man, knowing that Kamala Harris has spent almost a year taking a lot of the hits that the West Wing didn't want to take themselves," end quote, a former Harris aide told CNN, which based its report on interviews with nearly 36 insiders. The ex-staffer was referring to the Biden administration springing to defend Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg for taking paternity leave amid the global supply chain crisis. Buttigieg is considered a potential challenger to Harris for the Democratic presidential nomination either in 2024 or 2028. Okay. We've covered this in separate segments or fragments of pieces before pertaining to, again, Pete Buttigieg. He's gay. He's taking maternity leave, particularly paternity leave, rather. Sorry, on a time when you see what's going on with the cargoes, you see what's going on at the ports, you see what's happening there. And look, I got to be honest with you, folks. This is coming, in my opinion, this is coming right from Kamala Harris. They're deliberately leaking things to the press because there is infighting. She's not happy. Biden was the one that made her go and make that speech saying, "Do not come to the," no pun intended, but to the migrants that were that wanted to cross into the U.S., things like this, right? Apparently, I can't verify this, so I just want to say this is just something I heard from Joe Rogan, to be fair, and he didn't say it was legit or not. This was on the Tim Pool podcast last night. Was Alex Jones, Michael Malice, Joe Rogan, and a couple others in Tim Pool's trailer, for those that are familiar with this. And Joe Rogan said that he had read somewhere that Joe Biden's wife, was trying to get Kamala out, saying, okay, how can we find a way to sort of push her out by the time my husband's term is done, and things like that. Again, the marketing last year was phenomenal for the Democrats. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it was terrible, but it was phenomenal in the sense that it worked. Again, we got to be careful with that term because it's possible, with the election potential fraud, I got to be careful, but it didn't translate into anything realistic. It really didn't. So, again, the fact that there's infighting and the Western mainstream media is reporting it, this is deliberate. And it clearly shows that, I'll be honest with you folks, I'm not a big Trump fan with a lot of things he did, but he wasn't wrong when he said that this was going to happen in a lot of regards. So anyways, the next thing is that Wyoming, we're going to cover things all around the world, by the way. I just figure let's start with some domestic news. Wyoming domestic, because I'm in North America. Wyoming Republican Party votes 31-29 to stop recognizing Liz Cheney as a member of the GOP. Again, regardless if you say these GOP guys are conspiracy theorists or jokers or whatever, I would say the same about Democrats as well. If they're acting in bad faith or not, the voting rules. I mean, again, this goes to show that in pure theory, there's a lot of arguments that could be made that, when things are too good for people in general, even though there's still a lot of problems, not saying everyone's living fine and dandy, but when things get too good for those at the middle to upper class, shit like this starts happening. Not saying shit like this pertaining to Liz Cheney being removed. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if this were a vote out of bad faith, then it's more and more bad faith acting occurs because, there's far less you feel like there's far less things to worry about on your homeland because you feel, at least in this case, the U.S. is number one, we're unbeatable, things like that. And the reason I bring this up is because this is a prime example of bad faith actors on both sides. Again, two sides of the same coin in the political party spectrum, but you see the laxed form of realisticness that has sort of created an incursion into the political spectrum domestically, maybe not internationally, but domestically. And Again, hopefully this wasn't a bad faith vote to get Liz Cheney out. I'm not a fan of hers. I'm definitely not a fan of her father's. But, again, we have to look at all angles here to be fair, right? With that being said, my humble opinion, I don't like Cheney, so I'm cool with it. If you want just layman's terms. The next thing is that Bitcoin has plunged over 10% below the $60,000 price range. Again, it's going to fluctuate. I'm not trying to pretend to be some expert saying, don't worry about it, but it's going to fluctuate. I don't know what else one could say about this. Again, responding to what current event, what statement, yada yada. It's just like the stock market. Presuming I have all context here. The next thing is that Germany has temporarily suspended the certification of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Okay, there could be a multi-layer, multi-pronged reason for this. Intelligence, covert operations. I know I always jump to that, but that's usually because it's what it is, if you want to know my opinion at least. Not saying that's fact, but I'm sure there's other surface level reasons too. Let's see what happens. We will follow up on that story, I promise you. The next thing is that there is tension on the border between Poland and Belarus again. There have been clashes between migrants and Polish border forces. A Polish border guard suffered a skull bone fracture after being hit by an object, police reports say. Okay. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay this. Again, no one should physically get hurt, but this is the reality of the world. Unless people's ego and corruption, and I'm speaking not to those on the ground that simply just want to get across the border to live somewhere or something like this, presuming they're all doing this out of good faith, or most of them are. I'm speaking at those at the top. This is the innocent people and the soldiers and the ones you send out to do the dirty work. They're the ones that are going to get affected, whether it's financially, physically, emotionally, and in this case, it was physically. A soldier got hurt, a guard, right? Just trying to. I'm assuming the guards are trying to feed his family, her family, you name it, right? The next thing is that China sent 8 warplanes into Taiwan's air identification zone just hours after President Xi and Biden's cozy virtual meeting. I'm not going to lie, folks. You see Biden's meeting with President Xi. It's like tricking a kid. People thought that Trump was a kid to be tricked. And even if he was, Joe Biden, let's just say, it's like taking the lesser of two evils. If we're going to just go down that route for a second. If Trump was able to be tricked because, they said, Kim Jong-un would send him big letters and Trump loved it and was so proud of it, he'd carry it around. What's Biden doing? He's falling asleep at the COP26 meetings. His own vice president wants to sort of push him out in a certain way from what we just reported there. All these different things. You see President Xi and Biden in that virtual meeting. I caught bits and pieces of it. President Xi's smiling, hey, hey, how's it going? Biden smiling, hey. Are you kidding me? And then over here, China sent 8 warplanes into Taiwan's air identification zone just hours after the meeting. Oh yeah, so much for the, hey, everything's all fine and dandy, kumbaya. Biden's asleep, literally and metaphorically. Well, I don't know what to say. I'm not even trying to be pro-Republican here. Like, genuinely speaking, his brain is in the frying pan. So, the next thing is that there is no flexibility on Taiwan and the sanctions or trade. And I quote, Europe underestimates the Chinese people's aspiration for a reunification, end quote, China's EU envoy says after the President Xi-Biden meeting. We have to be vigilant that this is not a coy or a ploy or a tactic or a scheme of some sorts coming from China's European Union special envoy. I got to be honest with you. Again, maybe the people do want that, but we have to be vigilant of the agendas at the top. Let's be honest, folks. If we have miniature agendas within our own family and friends when we don't like something our own family and friends do. Imagine on a global scale. We can argue maybe this is human error or maybe not, but again. The next thing is that Gibraltar, the most vaccinated region on the planet Earth, cancels Christmas celebrations amid exponential COVID-19 spike, which is interesting because, again, we had just recently Fauci, we'll get to this in a second, but Fauci basically saying, if you're vaccinated, go enjoy Christmas and holidays with your family. But then what are they doing in Gibraltar? I mean, again, don't give me this whole, oh my God, but the Gibraltar, for example, they're doing a lockdown. Why? Because they're all fully vaccinated? You see how the logic doesn't suit there anymore, right? Because the presumption on the mainstream media would be, well, Gibraltar, maybe they're not all vaccinated. And if they're not all vaccinated, you're now pushing a conspiracy theory. You see how we got them in that sense, folks, if I explained it correctly, if that makes sense. The next thing is that, let's see over here, Prince Harry, along with the Aspen Institute, declare a, quote, war on disinformation, end quote. This came just 5 days after Prince Harry's wife, Meghan Markle, was forced to admit to a British court that she had made a misleading statement. Again, I like the way that was reported because it played both sides. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't listen to them because his wife made a misleading statement, but to be fair, these are ex-royals or whatever. I don't think we should have listened to them to begin with. Not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying I don't think these people should have a platform. Like, why? Even Tim Dillon brought something up on Joe Rogan like 6-7 months ago saying about like The View and stuff. Why? And I agree with him. Why are we resurrecting sitcom stars from the 80s and 90s and asking them their views on Palestine and things like that? I'm a nobody, and I think I would be, and you folks listening and watching right now would be more qualified than these people. Anyways, pardon the little rant there. The next thing is that Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam let JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon skip the mandatory 21-day hotel quarantine, quote, because of the size of the bank's operations in the Asian financial hub, end quote, and cited manageable risks. Pardon my English. Go fuck yourself. You see the hypocrisy? Don't care. If it was as serious as the media fearmongered it onto the world, why banking doesn't matter because you're gonna die. Banking doesn't matter. There's a virus, right? Do you see the hypocrisy? See how we're starting to nab them here? So the next thing, that was sarcasm, by the way, the first part. The next thing, is that U.S. authorities encountered 164,303 undocumented migrants along the southern border last month, the highest number ever recorded for the month of October, according to the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. Again, I don't think it's a conspiracy to say that when you put a Democrat in charge, again, two sides of the same coin in general, but when you put a left-leaning liberal Democrat in charge, the borders are much more swarmed and crowded because people believe, liberal, open principle, openness and things like this. But we're seeing now that the Democrat, if you were a Democrat 30 years ago, you're not a Democrat today. The Democrats, you can argue very strongly, the Democrats of today are not the ones from 30, 40 years ago. Being a liberal back then meant very different things. I mean, it gets to when Bill Maher, okay, on HBO is sort of trying to red pill his audience with the booster, talking about the boosters and all these different things. It really makes you think because, HBO is CNN's sister company in a lot of regards. So, again, it really makes you think. The next thing is that Biden administration plans to soon announce a, quote, diplomatic boycott, end quote, of the Beijing Olympics in China, according to the Washington Post. Yeah, okay, they leaked it to the Washington Post. They're going to boycott it. I think there's far more things to focus on. The reason why I included this in our report today in our news report is because I feel like this now validates a lot of the whole wokeness and stuff like that. And I say this, maybe that's a bit of a stretch to boycott the Beijing Olympics because of China and COVID. I understand that, but the way in which the Biden administration is going about this seems to give justification to that of the woke crowd, if you want to call it. Just my view and perspective, but again, I could be wrong. The next thing is that major German Catholic youth organization KJG wants to rename God to God with an asterisk or like a star next to it because, quote, the white male image of God falls short theologically, end quote, according to the association. What are we gonna do now? We're gonna give Barney, Blue's Clues, Winnie the Pooh both a penis and a vagina? Do you see what I'm getting at here, folks? People are looking into things way too much. My thing is this. I'm not against change, but change that seems to have common sense. But again, what is common sense these days? Let's be honest with ourselves. So, I mean, Christ, I'm just going to leave that there for you guys to interpret on your own. It's not for me to say if that's good or bad, I guess. The next thing is that House Republicans have obtained whistleblower documents showing that the FBI is using, quote, counterterrorism tools, end quote, to investigate and add, quote, threat tags, end quote, to American parents. This contradicts Attorney General Merrick Garland's sworn testimony. It does. I'm surprised. Again, two sides of the same coin. You'd think that they'd cover for each other. Republicans cover for Democrats, low key. Again, we see, Kamala Harris fist bumping Lindsey Graham when they've been publicly fighting on the news. Things like this, it's all a puppet show, but certain things like this make you think. Now, again, we also have to look at the bigger picture. Is this part of a puppet show to, again, distract, divide, say, look at what Merrick Garland lied. Meanwhile, other things are going on the other side of the spectrum, so to speak. We have to be vigilant of that as well. The next thing is that the Sixth Circuit Court is going to handle the consolidated case challenging Biden's nationwide vaccine mandate. Brett Kavanaugh is the circuit justice of the Sixth Circuit Court. The lead plaintiff will now be the Daily Wire magazine. Again, if there's legal standing relative to that of the Constitution and these federal judges, then yes, this is the way it should go. I fully agree with that. You know what might happen too, right? If this ends up going through, the Biden administration is going to blame Kamala and her team for being the ones that said, "Oh, just ignore the ruling of these circuit judges. Keep going forward with the mandate," as they said a handful of days ago. Watch Biden plant that on Kamala's team. Just taking a random guess here, but the next thing is that this is what I was referencing earlier. Dr. Fauci reappears on mainstream media and proclaims, quote, "If you get vaccinated and your family's vaccinated, you can feel good about enjoying a typical Thanksgiving, Christmas with your family and friends." Again, so then what about Gibraltar? The highest vaccinated region on Earth canceled all Christmas celebrations due to an exponential spike of COVID cases. I mean, yeah. And again, YouTube shouldn't be able to take me down for this because I'm just stating the what's being reported. It's not me saying, "Oh, I went to Gibraltar and I saw this." No. The next thing is that the Czech Republic has now banned unvaccinated people from public events and services starting this Monday. I'm not even going to touch that. You're going to give me on another half an hour rant. Let's save that for I don't know. The next thing is that Ireland has reimposed a COVID restriction, including a midnight curfew. 93% of the adult population is fully vaccinated. What happened to, we got to get it to 75%, 80%, like Fauci said, on per nation, we'll be fine. They're at 93. Even if they were at 99, I bet it would have come back. I would dare to argue Dr. Robert Malone's proposals all those months ago were pretty damn accurate. The next thing is that, again, and there's also the liberties and bodily autonomy. There's so many other things aside from just, proving people wrong for their parroting, if you will. It's not about ego and stuff like that, even though I may have made it seem like that. So I apologize formally, but it's too much. I mean, like I said the other day on the other Kraken, all it took with Europe, I was afraid of this. One European country, that's all it takes, and the rest are going to fall in line like a domino effect. So the next thing is that a British F-35 warplane crashes over the Mediterranean Sea. The pilot ejected and safely reportedly returned to the Royal Navy aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth. Again, okay. I mean, again, this is simply just presuming this is legitimate and it's not a cover story, then so be it. Everyone's safe, everything's fine. This may be a cover story, though. And if it's a cover story, I don't want to extrapolate or speculate on what it could be, simply because the government lies so much it could have been a cover for God knows what, for silly things or very serious things. The next thing is that Sweden withdraws its recommendation to exclude vaccinated people from testing. Vaccine passports are required for 100 or more people holding indoor events starting December 1st. Okay, we got to give them more credits due. They now want to withdraw their recommendation they want to take back what they said was recommending to not include vaccinated people from testing because, again, very possible Dr. Malone was correct. The next thing is that the U.S. reduces a strategic petroleum reserve by 3.2 million barrels, the lowest deposit level since 2003, according to the EIA. What I see, folks, I'm not an expert economist by any stretch or metric, not an analyst, as you know, but what even is an analyst relative to how we're finding out these people are frauds these days? But, I just see, plugging holes with glue and thumbtacks and glue, metaphorically, that the U.S. is doing right now. Hard to say. I believe Janet Yellen said that the U.S. government's the Treasury's gonna run out of money by December 13th or 14th, around there. The next thing is that the verdict on the Rittenhouse trial is close. Between 12 and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time earlier today, a Kenosha officer checked the local alleyway and verified there are bricks everywhere. Yeah, either way, it's going to be like the OJ case, in my opinion, in the sense that whether Kyle Rittenhouse is found guilty or not guilty is going to be enragement from either side. Again, we now have the revelation of there being an evidentiary hearing being held because of the video file name being changed. So again, let's presume this case is as transparent as possible, right? Again, we have the mainstream media attacking the judge and things like that. But again, if a judge is a judge, if people are not happy with the judge, maybe there could be another trial after this is over, in the sense of if they really believe, when I say they, I mean the mainstream media, that this judge was not good, then call for another trial with a different judge afterwards. I'm not trying to get all fancy with legal jargon and yada yada, but again, if that's the case, that's the great thing about, court of appeals, things like this, right? So the next thing is that the Ethiopia conflict is a threat to wider regional security, according to Antony Blinken. The U.S. Secretary of State is focused on Ethiopia while visiting neighboring Kenya during the first trip to sub-Saharan Africa. Again, I don't believe a word that comes out of that guy's mouth. I don't. So I'm not even going to pretend like that's even an opinion or belief of his. It might be, and even if it is, I don't even consider it, because these people are all psychopaths and like literal psychopaths, narcissists, liars, you name it. The next thing is that the IAEA says that Iran has increased its uranium stockpile. The IAEA, again, I forgot what it stood for off the top of my head. I'm not going to pretend like I know but won't say. I truly forgot at the moment. I believe it has to do with overseeing the enrichment of uranium and nuclear development of different nations around the world, if I'm not mistaken. This report comes days before scheduled talks in Vienna to restore Iran's 2015 nuclear deal. Again, it's strategy, chess, tit for tat. And if anyone suffers, just like usual, it's going to be the innocent people. If we're talking nukes, the next thing is that European Union-funded Palestinian school faces Israeli demolition. A school catering to marginalized Bedouin communities, hopefully I said that correctly, is one of 17 schools facing demolition for permit violations. Again, humans on humans. This is the reality of things. It's the Israeli Zionists, if you will, against the European elites. That's how I see it. Human elites versus human elites. The only ones that are suffering, again, are the children that want to go to school. To me, it's as simple as that. The humans want to go to school. They can't because more ego-driven humans and psychopaths are on both ends are just boom, going at each other in a chess game. The next thing is that Israeli missiles have targeted a building near Damascus, says Syria. Syria's state-run media said that Israel launched missiles towards an empty house early on Wednesday and no casualties were reported. We don't know. We don't know if that was a fear tactic, if we can believe Syria's state media. At this point, if I'm not on the ground, if we're not on the ground... The next thing, thankfully, again, presuming no one died, no one was murdered, but the next thing is that Biden and President Xi discuss how to align their stances on the Iran nuclear issue. Again, that has to do with their fuzzy little one-on-one virtual meeting that day. I think it was yesterday as of the day I'm recording this, or maybe the day before. You can't take Biden seriously. That's the next thing. And by the way, I'm not a fan of President Xi at all, but at least he's sharp. The next thing is that, Nigerian engineers say the design of the collapsed Lagos high-rise was altered. The 21-story building that collapsed earlier this month was only designed for 6 floors. Engineers in Nigeria have said, again, corruption in construction. It's not just in North America. Right? People immediately assume, Italian, this and that. It's not just in North America, it's all over. The next thing is that at least 1,000 people have been arrested since the Ethiopia state of emergency was put into place, according to the United Nations. Most of those detained are ethnic Tigrayans, with the UN chief warning arrests could, quote, widen divisions and resentments, end quote. Again, this is the thing with Ethiopia, the Tigrayans. Should we get involved? Should we not? Should there be an overarching power that sort of oversees the balance of the nations? But it's not a balance. It's overseeing the control of the West, in my opinion, relative to the UK, Israel, Australia, and a couple others. So make of that as you will. The next thing is that a Colombian nun was freed after a 4-year captivity in Mali has returned home. Sister Gloria Cecilia Narvaez had been held by an Al-Qaeda-linked group from February 2017 to her release on October 9th. This is just simple great news. Presuming this is reported accurately, great to hear that she's been released. The next thing is that Taliban has called on the U.S. Congress to release frozen Afghan assets. The $9.5 billion in frozen assets and loans threatens to worsen humanitarian crisis in the country, the group says. Again, why is if Afghanistan is no longer a problem? Maybe I'm missing context here. Why is the West the Congress of the West holding on to $9.5 billion from the Taliban? You see the unfairness here, guys, if we're really looking at this objectively. The next thing, and I'm not defending the Taliban, but let's be honest, the West has been no spring chicken with respects to how they've treated Afghanistan either. So the next thing is that 8 soldiers were killed in an Azerbaijan-Armenia border clashes. Baku and Yerevan trade barbs as flare-up along shared border threatens fragile ceasefire agreement. Again, these soldiers, they're the innocent people. You know what's going to happen here, right? Azerbaijan and Armenia, the leaders, it's a chess game. It's a chess game. Again, soldiers just trying to feed their family end up dying. Now, to be fair, though, I'm not saying that all the soldiers are innocent per se. There may be some soldiers that hold extremist beliefs, and again, that's a bit of a different discussion or topic to delve into. But the next thing is that Armenia has announced a ceasefire after Azerbaijan border clashes. I'm reporting this in Lineage, so that we know that this happened shortly after that sort of that clash there. The Armenian Defense Ministry says the ceasefire was brokered by Russia after clashes that sparked fears of a new flare-up. I think I know exactly what happened, as once you folks probably heard the word Russia, you heard me say Russia, Putin got involved. He goes, no, children, enough of this. I mean, children speaking to Azerbaijan and Armenia, so to speak, in a lot of regards. We all know that Putin also, this is just my opinion, I could be wrong, but Putin also has his own intelligence division strictly for those nations. So, not saying that he knows all, sees all, but when you have intelligence divisions or departments strictly focused on those certain nations, man, you as long as you're pretty damn good, you know what's going on. The next thing is that schools in Indian capital have been shut down indefinitely as smog worsens. Residents have urged to work from home, and trucks carrying non-essential goods have been banned as New Delhi's air pollution hits dangerous levels. Here's the thing. I can't help but think this is conflating and getting involved with that in a sort of Venn diagram visual sense with that of the with the global warming, climate change narrative. So again, I really am all for protecting and nurturing the planet. I am, but I'm also not for this ridiculous climate change narrative, because look at the narrative that's being 8 months ago. This was not even a thing. We saw with the Project Veritas video, maybe that's an anecdotal example, granted, but again, we saw the Project Veritas video with the CNN producer saying the next big thing is going to be climate change. If this was such a big issue, how come climate change was not on everyone's radar for the past 20 years? And you might argue that and say, Dave, it has been. I would say yes, granted, but why is it being pushed relative to that of, again, you're going to solve climate change by getting vaccinated? You're going to fix the economy by getting vaccinated. You're going to fix the climate. This is what they're correlating it to, and that's the issue I take. The next thing is that a Canadian minister has said he has no doubt that a deadly storm in British Columbia is linked to climate change. Again, I'm currently in Canada still, but I'm in a very, very snowy part of Canada, not in BC, but I don't want to give my location away publicly, obviously. But again, I got to be honest with you folks. I'm experiencing... I'm basically snowed in for a handful of days, but yeah. The next thing is that thousands were evacuated after an atmospheric river, a long strip of moisture in the air that transports water from tropical areas towards the poles, dumped the region's monthly rainfall average in 24 hours. Wow. The storm severed road and rail links and caused mass power cuts. One person was killed in a landslide, and at least 2 others are missing. Again, even if you're pushing this climate change thing, whether it was controlled weather that made this happen or not, the only people that end up dying, as per usual, are the innocent ones. The people just trying to get by in life, as we just reported right here. The next thing is that Amazon will stop accepting Visa credit cards issued in the UK from January 19th. And forward, the online retail giant has said. It said the move was due to high credit card transaction fees, but said that Visa debit cards would still be accepted. Visa said it was, quote, very disappointed that Amazon is threatening to restrict consumer choice in the future, end quote. Amazon responded saying, quote, the cost of accepting card payments continues to be an obstacle for businesses striving to provide the best prices for customers, end quote. No, you just want to control the market even more, Amazon, essentially. That's what I'm getting. If I'm missing something, please tell me, folks, but that's exactly what I'm getting here. Yeah, the move was due to high credit card transaction fees, but Visa debit is still allowed, but Visa credit is not. Okay. The next thing is that, again, the real solution to all this, if you want my honest opinion, folks, is very simple. We have to just stop even buying from Amazon, really. But by the way, I just wanted to mention as well, I forgot to write this down, it just came into my head right now. Drake dropped like $1 million at a Texas strip club the night after the Astroworld thing happened. So, I mean, make of that as you will. I actually, being from Toronto, I can say personally, there was one time where I was in a very high-end restaurant, again, not that I'd be able to afford to go there anymore at all, but I was in a very high-end restaurant. This was 3, 4, 5 years ago, something like that. No, 3.5 years ago, I think. Drake walked in and he bought roughly a $300,000 bottle of scotch. It's like, what? I mean, at that point, anyways. The next thing is that JP Morgan Chase is suing Tesla for $162 million US dollars or 121 million euros over tweets in 2018 by the boss Elon Musk. That he could take the electric car maker private. He did say that. The bank accused Tesla of, quote, flagrantly breaching a deal it claims should have triggered payments to JP Morgan. Mr. Musk's notorious tweets that he had funding to take Tesla off the New York Stock Exchange market sparked volatility in the share price. He later abandoned the move and was fined by the U.S. financial regulator. It gets to the point where when you have to cover stories like this, you got one super evil bank against another elite, think of him as you will, we got bigger issues to focus on, you know. And I bring this up because I think it's important. When we see that in like the top 10 read stories on the BBC, that should not be in the top 10 in my opinion. Again, it's just my opinion. It's possible that people aren't even reading it. It's the BBC employees putting it up saying, oh, this is top 10 just so they get more clicks for ads and whatever. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that we have bigger things to focus on in this regard. He's trolling. He's got the money for it. Let him troll more, whatever, right? So anyways, with that being said, thank you so much, everybody. We got a great, some members only content coming later today. We also have some stuff, of course, for the public, and we will catch all of you very, very soon. Cheers.